Hey, welcome back. This is a Fantasy Farmer. This will be episode 2 of the Angela Whispering Hollow Farms. If you watched the first video, which I hope you did, that kind of explains a lot of what we're doing here, and we'll want to continue with that. Off the air, I planted several of the cornfields. We got a couple of the fields to do still, and then we'll move time forward a little bit. We'll get to May, and then we'll go ahead and start planting soybeans in May. And then we'll just go from there. We're going to let the AI guy do this a little bit, and I can sit here and talk a little bit, and we can go about that. I know in this episode we're going to finish planting these last 2 cornfields that we have to do, and then we're going to move up, and we're probably going to go and talk about some of the livestock feeding, what livestock we have, and what we expect out of the livestock, and we'll just go from there. But we're still in April, really, for this area. we wouldn't be finishing up corn in April with this, even with this small amount. I don't believe we would probably be in May, but it would depend on the weather. Generally here in Ohio, the April is still pretty wet for us, so a lot of the times you're still not getting all your corn planted. Some of the sandy ground guys, they're planting pretty heavy right now, so we're just going to go ahead and finish our corn here in April, and we're going to go ahead and move up to May. If you look how we're playing a 2-day month. We are playing in real time. That allows us to get what we need to get done, and then we can kind of go from there. We can adjust time as we need. Once we get to May, we'll finish planting and getting all the beans done, get them in the ground. We are going to follow the weather, so if it starts raining, we won't plant. We won't make hay when it's raining. We won't combine when it's raining. Here on the game, you can do all that stuff. It does hurt the yield when you're combining, but we will not do any of that stuff when it's raining. We'll kind of do somewhat true to form on all that. So hopefully we don't get into the rain where we got to stop. If we do, we'll probably move forward and go from there. So we'll finish up in May on beans, and by the middle of May, the hay crops will be starting ready. And really, the biggest problem you have is you hope the ground's not too wet so you can get it dry. Used to be, you'd like that hay to be down for 3, 4, 5 days in the old system, and now, really we like 3 days. Mow it, bale it in a couple days, and you're done. With using the new technology, the disc binds, with the crimpers, they can get that water out of that hay, and the tedder's getting it teddered and getting it raked, and hopefully you got some good sun. So we'll do that in May also, in first cutting hay. We'll try to get at least 2 or 3 cuttings. We know we'll do at least 2, but hopefully we'll get 3 on that, and then we'll go from there. But we'll finish up this corn. When I was farming, the big variety for us was we was planting all Pioneer. I did sell Garst seed corn for a few years, so we did plant Garst corn and beans also. But Pioneer was really our staple for a long time. And even in this area today, Pioneer's still probably king. Bex has moved in and has bought a lot of ground, and so Bex has become really popular. I know we would be using Bex today if we were farming. I think they have a pretty good program, and it's a family-owned operation, so I like the Bex. And when you go to the farm shows and stuff, which we still do, you get to talk to those guys, and it just seems like they really come out and they really want to talk to you, and that's what kind of makes it nice. There's so many small seed companies now. Bex's, I know they're not small, they're a large company, but there's a lot of other small seed companies that will give you a good deal, and they're very personable, and that's what you kind of like to see in this industry. You like to see that personable thing, and same way with equipment. The equipment changes. You used to be there in Ross County, in Ohio here, there used to be a few dealerships for equipment, and now there's none. There's a used dealership that sells some smaller used stuff and a few big things here and there, but most generally everything that's sold now, you've got to go, 45, 50 minutes away, north or west to get that. And I think a lot of it's because that's where more of the flat ground is and your more open fields. And a lot of them's consolidated. I know John Deere is, I think, all consolidated in our area to Ag Pro, and I know they're in a lot of different places. So, and that's what you have on that. We used to have in Ross County, we used to have Green Line, which become JD and then become Ag Pro, I believe, after that. And they had a really good crew there, and very personal guys. One of the guys who is the salesman for them is still a salesman for Ag Pro in Washington Courthouse, Ohio, and him and I are still friends. And just a few months ago at the fair, we talked about how much the changes, in the last 30 years, what the changes of the ag industry and what's required now. You don't see the inventory as it you used to see. A lot of them's not keeping massive amounts of inventory just because of the cost. You look at these combines and $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 for a combine. You can't have too many brand new combines sitting there and trying to sell them. And then the used market right now is just the cost of the used equipment is just through the roof still. One thing with using the AI on this, he don't do it 100% like I would want to do it, but they do keep good straight rows. I don't understand why they're doing the ends like that right there, but we'll just let them go and let them plant. If you're using the marker arms, if you've ever used the marker arms when you're planting on Farm Sim, it does make a little furry, and it's kind of neat how it makes that little area right there for you to follow. So if we were farming ultra realistically, we'd be either using those or we'd be using our own GPS, and to get that realistic view. I know when playing with the 6-row planter, it was a little easier because you only had 6 rows you was messing with. My grandfather, he for many years used a 2-row. I think it was a 294 John Deere. It might have been an Oliver, I don't know, but it was just a 2-row. And he didn't plant a lot of corn, but that's what they would plant. And then he had that H Farmall tractor. They would put cultivators on. It didn't spray back then, and they would cultivate that corn. And it was kind of neat back in the day. He was talking about they used to cross hatch everything, so there was a wire that they would lay down on that for that planter at each ends, and that planter would set the seed out when it hit that notch, and would drop the seed. Well, they could take that cultivator, and that seed was dropped out perfectly in that field both ways, so they could run that cultivator up the rows and across the rows without hurting the corn. And that's what the cross hatching. That's what the old timers. And those guys wasn't planting. They might only plant 10 or 15, 20 acres a year doing that way because it was time consuming. But that was their method of weed control, being able to cultivate that like that and cross hatch it like that, which, at my time I thought, man, that was a lot of work to be able to do that. Cultivating was pretty much kind of going out of the wind when I started full time. There was guys here and there might do it, but the spraying was the main thing. And then Roundup started really coming on the full, and then they started with the Roundup corn and Roundup beans, and that really changed a lot. You're going to do your burn downs, and then you can go in there and spray those one more time, and that was the easier method, and it's still being used today. And there's still a lot of herbicides that are still used to control a lot of the weeds, and different areas have different weeds. So on Farm Sim, when you cultivate this ground, basically you don't spray. I don't know how that works, but they don't have you spray. So once you cultivate it and then plant, you're not having to spray. That'd be one thing I'd like to change on the game. That no matter no matter that it's cultivated, the weeds are still going to grow, so you're still going to have to spray. So that's kind of a weird little thing that's on this. Spraying's changed so much on equipment too. It used to be the pull type sprayers, and for many years that's all it was. I know my dad, I think he had like a 250 gallon pull type, and that's all they had. Manual, everything was manual. You're spraying it from an open tractor, it's hard to tell how much spray come back and hit you. And then I remember when the spray coops come out, they were kind of really some of the first motorized that come out. And then John Deere come out with it was kind of like a tricycle type looking, almost like a spray coupe, a narrow front sprayer. And then the big boys started coming out with the big sprayers, and there again you can get $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in a self-propelled sprayer right now, and with 100 and some foot booms, but you can cover a lot of ground with one of those sprayers. And now to support those sprayers, they got semis that's got 5 different tanks on it for water and all your herbicides and auto mixers. You need that to be able to keep up with those big sprayers like that. Farm Sim's got a sprayer trailer that you can get on here. I don't have one on this one. We will have one on the next big series that we do. I know a lot of everybody liked the Alma, Missouri map. I've played that probably 400 or 500 hours on a couple different farms, and it's one of my favorite. The original one, you had to go in there and do some work on the fields right off the bat. The new one that they just updated, a lot of the fields were not as wonky as they were on the first time around. You don't have to do as much. Generally, when I take over a map, I pretty much get rid of all the buildings and everything and put what else I want on it. I get rid of all the livestock from the very beginning also. Haven't done any dairy since Farm Simulator 22. We'll probably do a dairy series at some point. Probably just do it as 100% as a dairy. Just enough crop farming to support that dairy. But the Alma, Missouri map is so wide open. I liked it really well. You can do some pretty good size farms on it. Some of the fields we like to plow together, and you can make right there behind the farm that you start with. I think there's 3 fields that you can put together, and you can have some pretty sizable area. Now, when the new update come out, they made a pretty good sized ditch down on the left side. And I think that added character to that map, and that keeps you from splitting that or adding that field all together. One thing about the Alma map is it's easily traveled. You're basically working in an L shape. At one point, I think I farmed every single field, and that was always my goal, to farm all the fields on the map and own them. I have added the leasing mod to these, where we can lease fields. I'd like to do a series just on leasing, and I know we're going to do a contract series where we're just going to do contracts, and that's all also. But I think the leasing feature right now is that's pretty cool, to be able to go and lease those fields, because that's real life. You're leasing a lot of this property in real life is being leased, and I think that's a really good thing that they added. The financing, I use the financing. I like the financing. I wish you could finance it a little bit more realistic, more than 2 years. Most of this machinery is being financed for 5, 6, 7, 8 years for the cost. I know a lot of them's now offering 7-year financing. A lot of the equipment now, you can finance it with no money or with no interest for 5 years. The dealers these manufacturers want you in this equipment. and they know that they can finance it for no interest because they're still making the money off of it. So that would be one of the things that I would like to. I wish they would go to a 5, 6, give it a little bit longer option on that. And then the used, I have the used mod also. I haven't used it much. Generally, when I want to buy a piece of used equipment, I'll look at the sale stuff, but a lot of times you don't really want to wait, and that's kind of what's going on in that. You kind of have to wait a little bit with that mod to find that used piece of equipment. So this field here is done. We have one more to go, and it is the big field here by the driveway. It might be our largest one that we have. I don't have very good roads set up on this here. We probably could have come out the other side and went in, but we're just going to kind of drive through the field as much as you kind of hate to do that, but that's what we're going to do. This patch right here, this was the decision if we was going to leave this or if we was going to plow it in. Problem with plowing this field in, you'd have basically a Y right here. You'd have this split down the middle, and so I just decided to leave this like that and can just use it continuously as 2 fields. This where we're at right now driving, that was 2 fields that we put together, and you can see right in this area about where I'm driving is where I plowed all that in. So like I said, this field here is be the right side coming up the driveway. This will be the last field that we'll have in corn for this season. If you ever get in the country and you look at this driveway right here, it is a long driveway back to the farm, and man, I love it. My wife loves it. We would love to have a driveway like this where you're not bothered by anybody and you got that long driveway. Now I can tell you in the wintertime when the snow's on, you best have something to plow it because it's not going to be very fun to drive on. But it's a long driveway back there. So a lot of times I'll use the AI to get the vehicles to the front. I know we'll probably use AI a lot for the semis going, or the semi going out to deliver the grain when we start selling. We are going to store as much as we possibly can, and then sell it on a contract, what I would consider a contract, which is going to be the best sell time on the farm sim, what it tells us to sell at. There again, I don't know why he's doing it like this, but we're going to let him do it, and we'll go from there. Because should be going around that field twice, but why he decided to cut up through this way, I don't know. When I was putting lime on this field over here on this right side, I think I was using the 5088 pulling that big lime spreader, and it had rained, and I couldn't get pulled up that field. It just spin even with duals on, so I had to change out to the 7240 to be able to get the lime put on in this field. So higher horsepower, probably a little heavier tractor. Helped a lot. So I guess the weather does affect the ground a little bit, because I was still spreading lime there again. Really, and probably in real life, we wouldn't be spreading too much lime when it's raining like that. You ever seen lime delivered too? Usually they're dumping it in the field and then they're bringing a loader in and loading it into the lime spreader. It used to be the lime guy would come, and there was a lime, they would buy lime at the little quarry, and it was only probably 15-20 minutes away, and I believe it's already going by us, but they would come in with kind of a semi type thing, and they would spread 12-13 ton on, and then they go load another load. And then said, like I said, right now, if you get these fields, they'll deliver it in semis, dump it, and then they bring a loader in and fill their trucks. A lot of the guys like Keystone and nutrient there. They're using the floaters with bodies on them that will do fertilizer and lime. So the floaters are the ones with the bigger tires on it that can handle that wet weather, wet ground a little bit better than what if you was doing it with a truck tire. And with the technology with soil samples now, and especially grid soil samples, a lot of the guys are doing the quarter acre samples. So every quarter acre they're getting a sample. So when they're looking at that grid in their tractor with the planters or the combines, they know what that soil is, and that gives you the benefits with the smart technology, especially putting on lime or fertilizer. It can put on less or more where it needs it to go, and so that's probably one of the biggest benefits of that for this precision farming. I know for Farm Sim there's a couple new things for coming out for precision farming that's going to be kind of interesting to see how it works. There again, if you're wanting to farm ultra realistic, it'll help you out on that. I think a lot of this game is you got to kind of find out what you want to do, and that's what I kind of did. I mean, I like it because now I can have all the equipment that I never had before. And yeah, it's not real, but sometimes it almost feels like you're real because you're running some of that equipment and making decisions, and sometimes that's all you need. I hear a lot of times, well, you don't do that, you don't do this in Farming Simulator, and I tell everybody, farm the way you want to do it. It's supposed to be for enjoyment, and that's what these games are all about. Is for your enjoyment. So if you want to run that tractor 500 mile an hour, run that tractor 500 mile an hour. If you want to have a motorcycle run around in this field, run that motorcycle around in it. Do what you enjoy. I just enjoy kind of doing it more realistically, I guess. I've played some unrealistic stuff. Capacity-wise, that's been I've used a lot of unrealistic capacities. I don't know what this guy's been drinking, but he's not doing a very good job planting on this field. But we'll just let him keep on going, and we'll see what happens. Kind of go back to those international planters. This 950 was the last of those, and then they come out with the early risers, and those early riser planters now today are just overall just terrific. I think they've surpassed the John Deeres, the 1770s and stuff like the ones like that. That's the 17 series of the John Deeres is a terrific planter too. I know that if I was farming today, I'd like to have one of the early risers. They're an attractive looking planter. They just plant really, 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 really good. And then these old planters here that Case IH had, and a lot of them you used to see these in 4 rows, especially in the 70s, run into many of the 4 rows. But they were an air planter all the way from the beginning on this series right here. We had a John Deere 494, which is a 4-row, just a plate planter. You put plates in it, and the corn would go in the plate and come out. Ended up planting some sweet corn with it, but they were no-till, so you had to till that ground. They basically had an opening disc, and that's about all. But those was what worked for guys everywhere. They made a 694, I think it was a 6-row, and I think the 894 was the 8-row. I don't know if they made a 1294 or not. I imagine maybe for the plains. Those guys farming a lot of ground back in the old times. They probably did. I know the biggest one I'd seen was the 8-row. And those were made up until the 70s. Before that 7000, the 7000 replaced those, and really that 7000 planter was just it. It was the game changer. It was the game changer for everybody, really, because it was so much better. It was a lot better than the International at the time. So that's why they become vastly important and popular. And then a lot of times today you'll see, your top 3 planters is still John Deere, Case IH, and Kinsey. Always liked the Kinsey planters. And they were still today are as popular as any time. And they're making huge planters also. I did watch a 6-row sell at an auction about 6 months ago, and I think it brought like $52,000 for a 6-row, but it was only a couple years old. It was a really nice planter. So you can still get a lot of money in those small planters. But you just don't hardly see those guys anymore. You guys using the 4 and 6 row planters that much, even by us. I think it's just all about the economics and how much you're planting and how fast you need to get it planted. I know when I was planting, you plant those edge rows first, and then you drive over them so much, you think, man, how in the world does that corn or those beans come up? And they do, and it really doesn't hurt them very much. You would be surprised. A lot of times when you're doing those in-rows, you really can't tell. On my 6-row planter, I always like to run 4 rounds or 24 rows. I run a 7720 John Deere combine, a 6-row head, and that give you plenty of rows to turn, or plenty of space to turn when you did 24 rows like that. And then you could get your wagons, or I had a smaller semi. I would take a smaller semi and put there, and you could get that in with those 24 rows. A lot of the guys only did an 18 row if they were planting 6 with a 6 row. Now I believe they're probably planting, if they're running a 16 row, they're probably running 2 rows, probably pulling 32. They might be running around putting 48 rows on the outside. Just depends on how big of combines and how many rows they're planting. A lot of the guys who's running 16 row planters now are running 16 row heads, which you can cover a lot of ground with a 16 row corn head when you're doing a harvest, and don't take long to fill up a buggy. And you're getting those semis. If you got to run them very far, you better have a bunch of semis, because it don't take them long to get them full. One thing about these 950 Case IH planters is they were kind of a basic planter. Same way with the 7000s and even the 72 maxi merges for Deere. They were pretty simple to work on and pretty basic. That was probably the nicest thing about those. You could still work on them without having a PhD in mechanics, and that's always important, even today, is that you can work on this equipment. And these modern tractors, these newer ones that's so computerized and everything, you're going to have techs work on them. Where our AI guy did it right after he got round down, so I don't know if he figured out what he did wrong or what, but he's planting right now. Hope this don't bore you too much watching that tractor plant. I said I wasn't going to talk this much, but I think sometimes that's what that's everybody wants to hear. We'll look at the side view again. there again on these 20 series Case IH tractors, the tractor gets so dirty, but the front tires are as clean as can be. I don't know, it must be something with the mod, but they get dirty, dirty, dirty. That's a nice system right there. That's a 2294 Case IH tractor. Probably an 86 model, 85 model. Probably an 85, like I said, because the 96 comes out in 86. So that had a three power shift in it. So if you was in second gear, you had a little switch on the side. You could go 1, 2, and 3. You could bump it up to speed yourself up, and that was always nice. So if you got into, especially in the hay or tillage where you need to bump yourself down, if you was already up, you could bump yourself down a notch, and that was their 3 little power switch, and they were pretty reliable, easy to use. Some of the new power shifts and the new transmissions in some of these tractors now are just a lot more difficult to use. I had a Deutz 160, I think it's a 160, 200 horsepower front wheel assist tractor, and it had gears coming out the wazoo, and the problem with it is there was so many different gear options that there was just too many to use, and because you're really, when you're doing tillage or planting, you're really only using a couple of different gears, and that was the key, especially planting. You're wanting to plant at the same speed the whole time, and tillage is pretty much the same way. And now with the high-speed tillage, some of those guys are running 10, 11, 12 mile an hour on some of these tillage tools. I know if we was playing ultra-aerial, we would be plowing or planting all this stuff ourselves. And I had done that, I think, in 19, and on a big map. And I think it took me, 50, 60, 70 hours to plant what I was planting. And it almost took the fun out of it. Be able to sit there and run up and down, up and down. I did all the tillage and everything, so I use a lot of the AI workers to get stuff done, and then it just depends on what it is. I know with the round bales, I do all the round baling, and then we'll pick up all the bales and all the feeding. And a lot of times I'll do the startup on a lot of this stuff, or the combine. And then we're going to cut some silage this year, so I bought the smaller Kloss self-propelled chopper and some wagons. We're going to do it small time, and so I'll haul the wagons back and forth. Farm Simulator just allows you to do whatever you want to do. You want to run AI on everything, run AI on everything. You want to run a lot of stuff yourself, you can run stuff yourself. That's the beauty of this game. And it does look real. I mean, you look at the side view of this, it's pretty realistic. The tractor looks really, really, really realistic. The planter looks really realistic. Most all the equipment that I'm using is realistic to form what it should look like, and the modders who have made this stuff have just went and did just a terrific job on this. I see a lot of posts, people say, I wish we had this, wish we had that, and yes, it would be nice, but these modders, most of them aren't making any money for this, so they're doing it out of their kindness of heart because they like to do it, and so it's hard to, I don't want to complain about modders because, man, without them we wouldn't have all this awesome equipment. And that's probably the nicest thing about it. And I know everybody knows a lot of these modders who they, by their names, what they go by. And I did go to a couple different sites to add some of these. Both of these were not on the Giants download site, so these are off of a different modder. And some of that more unusual equipment, you'll have to do that with. I know in, I think it was 19, there was some issues with some bugs. I think they just, some of them wasn't doing their due diligence, stuff getting put in, but I think I unloaded or did 50 or 60 the other day, and I didn't have any bugs. I had one or two that did not. They're on my download list. They're in there, but they just don't show up. One of them is a New Holland square baler. I think it's a 570, which was close to. I had a 565 on New Holland square baler that I'd bought new. So I was going to. They didn't have a 565, so they had that 570, and I can't get that thing to work for nothing. I can't get the mod to come up. So some of the mods you kind of got to watch on something like that. I probably put too many on at one time. I've probably got 500, 600 mods on this computer right now, just what I'm looking at. But I like to do some specified stuff too. I like a lot of the equipment. Even though I'm a red guy, I like the Case IH and the international stuff the best. I do like some John Deeres, and I like some Deutz. There's just a few Deutz tractors out there that are just mean looking. You get into that, even that 75, 80 horsepower for loaders on it. I got a picture. My youngest son at Farm Science Review a couple years ago on one, and it just is a mean looking tractor. And they really are. They are a performing tractor. The neat thing about the Deutz, if you don't know about them, is they're air cooled. You don't have a radiator. I can't tell you if that's for the large tractors too, but all the small tractors. And then the 160 that I had, it was air cooled. The older Deutz, I remember selling. A lot of the dairy guys used to use a lot of the older Deutz tractors because of that being air cooled. The 06 series, what I call the 06, the OT series. You'd see those sell a lot of the dairies. They were that 50, 60, 70 horsepower tractor. They pull their TMR carts or their wagons or feed wagons with them. And like I said, those were just a air-cooled tractor, and they did not have any trouble with them being that way. And I think that's one reason why a lot of the dairy farms did use them. Tell you a tractor that come out in the 80s, really come to the United States in the 80s, was the Belarus, the 825. And you could buy when they first come over here, you could buy a brand new Belarus for, I think they were $9,250, or 81 horsepower tractor with a cab on it, front wheel assist. They were kind of an off-red, I don't know. They still make them today. Of course, they're made in Belarus, which is right next to Russia. And I had a friend of mine had one, and the comparison is it was like a Volkswagen inside, compare a John Deere or an International, which would have been a Cadillac inside. They were very basic, but man, they got the job done. And always thought about buying one and never did. And now the problem with them now with a lot of these tractors is the prices on them are not much difference than what you can buy a John Deere or a Case IH. I know a friend of mine bought a new John Deere, I think it's a 6330 a few years ago, and was looking, and he didn't even go to John Deere just because he thought it was going to cost too much, and he went to a lot of the others and ended up buying the John Deere because it was about $5,000 cheaper than what the New Holland was. And so, it's what you want. You'll find in a lot of the larger farmers, they kind of stick to the color that they like or always had. You watch a lot of farm auctions, and you'll see most of the time that they'll be all John Deere guys, or they'll all be Case IH guys. You'll get some, every once in a while, you'll get that guy that's got Gleaner combines and Massey Ferguson tractors. And there again, I think that the Massey Ferguson, you see a lot of them in Europe. They're not as they're not as they're not. I mean, they're highly common here, but they're not as you don't see them as much. A lot of the older Massey Fergusons are, but you don't around me. You don't have any big farms. It's just running a bunch of Massey Fergusons. You know, they're a good tractor. The Gleaners. What's kind of neat about the Gleaners is my grandfather had a Gleaner combine. And, you know, they're the galvanized look combine. That's what the combine. They look like they're galvanized and on the outside, and that's the look that they've had forever. And so that's kind of their. You know, you can always tell them. I know my friend, my dad's got. He's got a couple of them, and they really like the Gleaner combines. I started out with a International 715 with a German diesel in it, and it was a decent little combine, but it was an older one and had some problems. And then I went to a John Deere 7720, and it was a nice combine. Had it the second year, in the feeder housing main shaft went out of the on the cylinder. That kind of sucked. That was $6,000 to fix that. So, but you know, at the time, the 7720, well, then the 8820, that was John Deere's biggest lineup. The 8820 was their big one. I ran a 20-foot head and a 6-row corn head on mine, and with ease. The guys out west was running 24-foot row or 24-foot platforms on their 7720s, and but most of the time the 4 and 6 rows. And they mowed those down. You used to see a lot of the 4420s, and they were a smaller, more maneuverable, and they were really popular in these hill farms. But they come, that 20 series, you know, they made 7700s before, and so you used to see a lot of those before. And then before that series, I believe it was the 45s, 55s, 95s. And then in the international side, it was the 715s and 815s, and then they went to the 1400 series. I think it was the 1440s, 1460s, 1480s. And then had those for a few years, and then they put the 1420, which I think it was only about 120, 130 horsepower. Probably had 150 bushel grain capacity is all it had, and it was a lot. You don't hardly see very many of those. The 1460, and that's what we've got here on this farm. The 1460 was by far the most common, and then after that they went to the 16 series. Well, we're still in April and it's 61 degrees out, not too bad. Still trying to figure out why he did that cross planting right there, and don't really make no sense, but we're getting her done. This field here, this will be our silage field. We'll probably chop our silage out of this field here, just enough to fill our one silo that we have. There again, by about the middle to later part of August is when silage in this area starts really hitting full swing. Not a lot of the guys are cutting silage anymore. Just because they're not feeding cattle. The dairy guys, but we're down to just a couple dairies in the area. We have one down the road from us, and they were milking 400 head, and then I talked to him here a few weeks ago, and he said they was down, I think, 120 to 125. So yeah, the dairy in this area is just not huge anymore. It was never huge anyway, but hog-wise, there is no more hog farms per se left in this area. There's some guys that's got some few sows that's got raised some show pigs. We were the largest for a long time in this little area where we were at. Now, if you go up to a little bit north, there's a couple larger sow operations up there. I think there's one that's 4,400 sows, but there was a large one in right at the Pike and Jackson County line that was years ago, and I believe they've all went out now too. And there again, a lot of them went to the corporate side of it, where you have to raise so much to make any money. And hog prices are not too bad right now compared to what they were. And corn prices are, for the feeder guy who's feeding animals right now, corn prices aren't so outrageous where you can't feed cattle or feed hogs. Cattle, on the other hand, right now is to be able to go out and buy steers or even bottle calves. We used to buy bottle calves to feed out. Used to pay $100, $110 for big Holstein bulls back in the day, and now you can see those same Holstein bulls sell for $1,200, $1,300. Watched the auction the other day that they were selling 2-day-old Holstein bulls for $1,200 a piece. So times have really changed on that. And then for what you're getting finished cattle for, we were used to sell 900-pound Holstein steers, and we'd get about 63 cents a pound. And those cattle right now is some of those, if you would sell them today, even at a Holstein, you're still getting over almost $3 a pound on those. Where your beef prices are so expensive, and that's why finishing out these cattle right now for the normal guy, and that's why a lot of the guys here aren't doing it anymore, is there's just really no money in it. The cow-calf operations are the guys that are making the more money, and most of them are having those calves and weaning them off about 600 pounds, and then they're selling them. We are kind of unique where we're at. We have Hillsboro that's a little west of us, and there's actually 2 stockyards producers in Union that's still left in Hillsboro. You'll see cattle, hogs, and everything come from Kentucky, West Virginia, and everywhere else going into those. So it's pretty unique to be able to have that. And because then I believe there's a producers also in Gallipolis would be probably our next one. I had a question on seed populations. It used to be, I used to plant around anywhere from 18 to 22,000 seed population for this for corn, and now a lot of these guys are planting anywhere from 28 to 36,000 on seed population, and that has really changed. I think I looked at the averages around 32 now, somewhere around in there, 32,000, and so that is really went up. And then on beans, I used to plant 80 pounds to the acre. Now a lot of them we're running 150 pounds to the acre. With this soil being built up with precision farming, with getting the lime right and getting the potassium and the potash in there right, you're just able to make this soil better, and so you're able to grow better. Crop rotation has really helped, and that's what you'll see really in this area, a lot of the crop rotation. The issue though is a lot of your large guys only grow corn and beans, so you're basically doing a corn and beans back. Most of them down here, unless they've got some cattle, aren't baling any of the corn stalks. So they're putting that matter back into the ground, and that does help on that. The local dairy farm here, they're spreading all their manure. That helps them immensely on fertilizer costs, because they're putting it right back into the ground. And they do spread a lot. They do spread a lot of dry, and they do spread a lot of wet. But yeah, that's, you can run those bigger populations now because of that. I know I used to joke, I used to get, I think, 3.3 acres per bag of corn seed, and now it's a lot less than that. I think it's about 2.5. I haven't priced corn seed for a few years, but I know when I was buying it was about $110 a bag. I know it's more expensive now, but you don't see the bags going out. Most everybody's buying in totes. It's cheaper, and they're, you go out and start dumping bags into a planter. It takes some time. If you got a big planter, you're not going to be dumping bags. You're going to be using a tender on it and putting those seeds right in, putting that seed right in that tender, and then putting it in your planter, and then you can pull it. That was always my problem. We had a farm that's 21 miles away that I farmed, and especially with soybeans, you'd have to load a whole truckload up to go out and fill that planter up, and then go back and get another load to finish it. So that was always a problem with using the bags. Same way with wheat. There's a lot of variables. I mean, today the variables are probably more so than what they've ever been, and with your options and what you can do and how you can operate, you can be specialized. That's probably the biggest thing right now. Is a lot of these guys have specialized and have become really good at it. They know their equipment. That's probably the most important thing, and know how much ground they can cover, and what the temperatures and the soil conditions are going to give them. The temperature and the soil conditions, the depths, all these, and we did too. But the new planters and the new drills, is they're monitoring so much now. If they're first something clogged, within just a few seconds they know it. Where it used to be that before you had monitors, you might not know it until you go put seed in it again, because you didn't use any seed in that box. So, technology has really, really helped that. So that allows you to specialize in making sure you're getting the right amount of seed. And because once you go back there and plant a little bit, and you go back there and start digging those up to see where you're laying that seed at, you'll see where you get. And like I said, a lot of these guys, these big guys now, they're either grain farmers. Most of them have got rid of the livestock, and they're just running grain. And it allowed them to with getting rid of the livestock, it allows them to work a few months of the year, 4 or 5 months a year, and then the rest of the time they can do their maintenance and do some other things, and they're not married to the farm like they were when they had all the livestock. Back in the day when the guy farmed 100, 150 acres, and he had 25, 30 cows and 50, 60, 70 sows he was taking care of. It was a 7-day-a-week job, 365 days a year, and that's what the family did. And I know as a kid, we just like for the fair, that was our vacation, even though that my grandfather took us to Myrtle Beach every year. But a lot of the farm families is the fairs, and that was their vacation, or they didn't go on a vacation just because of the amount of time that it took to take care of all the livestock. And there's always something happening. The grain guys are probably a little bit easier on that, because they're working on their equipment during the winter time and getting it all ready to go, and come March they're really starting to gear up, and April, May, and June, and then they're spraying. And then harvest comes, and they want to be done by November, middle of November, in our area now. It used to be that, got to be done by the first of the year, and you hope sometimes it's going to freeze so you can get that combine in that wet ground. But now it's you're getting that crop in and getting it out pretty fast. So with doing that, that gives them a few months to kind of relax a little bit. We're not having to worry about taking care of that livestock. And that was the biggest problem with the guys that farmed a lot of ground and had a lot of livestock. You know, you need to get that crop in the ground, but well, you also got to get your livestock taken care of. So that was always an issue that you wanted to be able to do. And like I said, times are changing on all that. We're just about done with this field. I think we'll finish this field up, and then we'll go up and look at some of the cattle and hogs, and then we'll finish this episode up. All right, next episode will be we're going to start planting soybeans. Well, our AI guys stopped here. We'll finish this last swath right here. What we can see. And then we'll go up there and we'll look at the cattle and the hogs and go from there. Of course, this outside edge right here, this was an outside edge that I had tilled, so maybe that's why he did not do this. Our next time around, it'll be, it's a little better. I don't know if he learns or what, but I'm missing some spots there myself. We'll go ahead and finish up this end right here, and we'll go ahead and fold this planter up. We'll take it back up to the farmyard and get it changed over to beans. And we'll move the calendar up to May, and we'll start planting beans here in May. And that's all she wrote. We'll get her folded up and go from there. I will tell you, in real life, it's a lot slower process than that, also folding it. Going back to this driveway, you almost, from the road, you can't even really tell there's even anything back here up on that hill. That would be your ultimate seclusion. I don't figure your delivery drivers would like it too much, UPS or FedEx or the mailman bringing you a package, having to drive up through there. Must be a pretty good grade though, because the tractors really slow down going up it. There's our wheat field. That's got weeds in it. We'll get in it in July, and then we will go ahead and we'll bale hay in it also, or bale straw, I'm sorry. Might even square bale the straw. Been contemplating putting a house here to the left to get it out of the farm shop. Right in this area to the left. Kind of a little bit where the hay field, that little bit of area right there close to the road. Haven't made up my mind yet on that. So we'll go here and talk about Some of the livestock. These are Berkshires. Right now, the Berkshires in the regular pig business is they're pretty popular. Pretty nice hog. These look, I don't know, these don't look like purebreds really, but maybe it's because they're mud. You know, if these are gestating sows, we'd be feeding them 4 pounds of gestation feed. If they were gilts, we'd be, and a gilt's a sow that's never had a pig yet, we'd be feeding them 5 pounds of gestation. And then when they have pigs, you kind of must put them on automatic feed. And I always fed a high-fat diet. I think the high-fat, it just seemed like my hogs were healthier and grew better on a high-fat diet. And back in the day, we were using Kent feeds, and with us owning the feed mill and selling feed, it made it a lot nice. And Kent was our big dealer back there. Kent was our big feed that we sold. And so I was able to learn a lot about feeding properly. So, and then we got one storage bin there we get, what I consider getting delivered. This is a small monoslope, and if you know anything about monoslope cattle barns, they're kind of becoming the most popular. These are all supposed to be Angus, but looks like we got some maybe some red Angus in here too, or Limousine, probably more red Angus. Right now they're just eating hay. Don't have any. We don't have any TMR or silage to feed them. We can't feed them corn. But the monoslope buildings, if you ever look at like Summit, if I was putting a new monoslope in, I'd have Summit put mine in. Like to have a 100 wide and 1,000 feet long. That would be for 1,000 head of steers. And it's got they're kind of different ways. The Summits have an alleyway in the back also with the feed bins. You feed the sun. You follow the sun. You feed where the sun's at with those, and then you have a scraper pins right through here where you're scraping in. It's got a deep bedding pack in the middle where you're putting in deep bedding, and that's how those are being finished out. So that's what these cattle are here. I bought these at 900 pounds. We'll take them to about 1,600 pounds, and we'll sell them. So these aren't cattle that we'll have for a real long time. And that one right there is a cow. That's the only thing. Another thing I don't like about buying the cattle is I wish we could just buy all steers. These ones right here, what I don't understand, they have the feedlots, but these will, if we keep them too long, they'll still have calves. And that's not what we're trying to achieve here. We're just kind of making these more of a feedlot cattle. So we're going to wrap this episode up, and this is the Fantasy Farmer. Remember, farm until the money runs out. Thank you, and have a good night.